All right, and now we are on to part four of our hiring series. If you've been following along, we've done parts one, two, and three in the previous weeks. And today we are going to be talking about onboarding and building high performers. So, in the first few episodes, we talked about how to attract maybe some good clients with your marketing and your outreach. And then we talked about the process of having an interview, how you should set up your interview, how you should structure it to make sure that you're asking the right questions and the candidate gets a good understanding of what you do. And now we're talking, okay, you've landed them, right? You've given them the offer letter, we've done the negotiations, and now it's day one. They're walking through your doors and they are saying, what did I just sign up for?
Yep, exactly. I love it.
Today we're just going to run through that. What we would do. Brian has six clinics for context, and he onboards people probably once a month, right at this point. And I was over now. Right now, I'm a cash mobile and hybrid clinic in Phoenix. But before all of this, I was over six clinics as well, something like 40 PTs. So I was also in where Brian's at, where it's you're onboarding, you're doing a lot of this stuff as a matter of course. So hopefully we can give you some good understanding of what we've gone through, something that you can bring into your own clinic. And Brian, I want to know, you guys are doing it right now. I haven't done it for a year or two. What does day one look like for someone who signs up with Evolution?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we do that I would say we've kind of adopted is like a 2 week, like here's your schedule, here's what this looks like. It's all about kind of learning our systems, learning what's going on. I think a lot of it has to do also specifically with them meeting the team, but also specifically, um, sort of getting an understanding of the lay of the land, number one. Number two, the lay of all the different programs that are going on. Two, the EMR. That's a biggie because if somebody like doesn't know how the EMR works, then they need a little bit more onboarding on that, particularly get them up to speed. Um, so there's a lot of that goes on. And so I think from that perspective, like there's those kind of concepts that we really harp on. Um, I think that that's the biggest piece. We'll get into some of the more specific things that we work on, but they're definitely meeting with me. They're definitely meeting with their clinical director. They're definitely meeting with our regional office manager. They're learning more about the expectations, the culture, the values, where their career path is. It's a lot of stuff around them. But a lot of people are also like, I don't know what I want to do and what I want to go. Like I'm like they're dizzy by the end of the first day. So I think I've learned a little bit less is more, but structure is king in the first 2 weeks or so, for sure.
Well, the great thing is, I know you have on our PhysioGrowth mentorship group, you actually provide the 2 week blueprint that you use.
Yep.
And it's something that it's a living document, so people can change in and out. Obviously, not everyone in our group has, the amount of onboarding that you'll have to do in a year. But it's something that's modifiable. And I think that's the important part with what you just said, is that you as the owner are making sure you're there when a
Yep.
staff PT walks in the door. Now, is that going to happen at ATI? Is that going to happen at Athletico? No, it just logistically, you're lucky if you even get the regional director there. But in most people who are listening to this who are not corporate, I think it's a huge win if you as the owner can be there on day one or at worst day two and make sure they know on day one you'll be there because that's that buy-in. I mean, the thing that we would always say is roll out the red carpet. Sometimes, I mean, I even had it where I had directors who would buy them stuff, right? Like, hey, I'm going to get your lunch today. Or, we had swag that we would get from the company store, right? In a big corporate. And they would say, I'm going to buy them a t-shirt and like a water bottle just so they feel like, a big old hug on day one. And I think that's the biggest thing you need to do is day one, day two. You just need to make them feel like I made the right choice, right?
Yep.
Um, and then that's going to open up the floodgates to, okay, now I'm more receptive of the culture. I made the right choice. Why is it that you do it this way? Or, why are you scheduled every 40 minutes versus an hour? And then you can kind of go in and you can coach your directors to say, great question. This is why we do it. Um, I think the big thing is leading with purpose. The director needs to know there's a purpose behind everything we do. And if they don't, you as the owner have to understand it and teach them. But every question they ask, why is our PTO policy like this? Why is, because you have to say it, it's a purpose. You said something on the call that was great that I know we did a call last week and you guys would adjust and change PTO policies based on staff feedback, right?
Yep.
And how it would affect them. That's a huge thing that someone wants to know is I can walk into a clinic and I have a voice, on a major policy decision. So those are the things that we would always tell our directors is you got to give them a big hug. You got to really make sure that they understand we're all here for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've learned, in fact, I was having a conversation about it now, is, and we start right off the bat, is the culture, right? We've had some people that have come in, and I think initially, you'll always get this kind of, you'll always get this initial pushback, I think, from certain employees that have leftover cultures and values from maybe another job they've had or something from college they've learned, et cetera, something like that. And so the biggest thing I think that it's important to understand is what the culture is in our clinic, what we value, and what we're trying to do. We're very mission driven, right? The whole perception
Mhm.
of physical therapy piece is huge for us, and what we're trying to change now we're trying to build it. And ultimately, when it comes to it's funny. I was talking about this with a personal trainer who's really stepped up and grown with us and done a really great job. And one of the things that I said to him I was like, what you're describing to me is that this trainer that we have right now is kind of rocking the culture that you've built. And I said, this is the next step, right? I go, the first step is I was creating the culture with you, and we were creating the culture here, but now what's happening is now you're having to cultivate, you're getting frustrated by the lack thereof the ability for them to actually like push forward, right? And I said, so at the same time, I was like, what we need to do is actually like get to a point where, you know, the culture just becomes seamless. But it's like a team, right? So you need to have those conversations and need to have that. And I'm a big believer in explaining the why. The reason why this is important is X, Y, or Z thing. The reason why this is important is X, Y, or piece. You know what I mean? So um, I think that's a huge part of it. And just
Yeah.
explaining that to different people. In this particular case, this one employee was basically like, I'm not working on this day. And it was like a Saturday. And it's like, that's not how this works. You're the low man on the totem pole, and it's just kind of like if we tell you to do it, like you got to do it. And the culture is you're telling your boss no, and that he's got to do it instead. Like is that leadership quality that you would think we should accept? And so that's a piece where you start to understand how that process works. And again, it's an ongoing process, but I think it's really good to establish that tone early, for sure.
And that's huge. And that's where we look at now that's interesting because that's a point of contention in the onboarding process, right? And it does happen. There's some bad hires, and you only really find it out in the first week or two, or maybe not a bad hire, but just bad preconceptions, like you
Yeah.
said, right? And this is why it was important with us. We would always push the 30, 60, and 90-day reviews. And this is somewhat common, but I think if you're a practice owner and maybe you've only worked at one clinic that was owned by a PT who maybe has two or three other clinics, then you decided you want to start your own, you may not have been exposed to this, but this is very common in corporate PT, where you have a structured meeting between the director and the new hire at 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months. Now, 95% of these are just rah-rah meetings. It's like, hey, how you doing? I know I gave you that big handbook on day one. Do you have any questions about the PTO policy? Hey, I see that you're doing your notes and it's taking you a while. Is there any questions for this? You're doing awesome. Let's go. But it can also be a great place for you to have that conversation you had, right? Where you're like, look, the expectation is not that you tell the boss when the boss works, right? And then the 60 and 90, again, it's more so that you can start to then branch into they are a full expectation therapist of, okay, you've been here now for a month, 2 months. These are now the 60 and 90-day conversations tend to be more productivity driven, where you're looking and saying, okay, you know the PTO policy. You know where to hang up your coat. But I'm noticing you're losing patients after 4 visits.
Yeah.
What can I help you to do this with, right? First one, I typically don't do productivity because they just barely learn the system. But it's a good way of having a structural conversation that doesn't feel like the director is coming at them. It's like it's a meeting, we're just going to talk. right? So I know, Brian, that was something I was used to. Do you guys have that, or do you have some equivalent to that?
Well, it's funny because I was actually going to pick your brain here because this is something where I think Owen's background actually is better.
Okay.
For us because
Hey,
we
I won one.
established, I know, we established a lot of it, but what I'm curious about it and keep going because you were talking about how you had a specific structure that you built. So tell
Yeah.
me about that, and then I'll jump in and kind of show you what we've done. It's
For
similar.
the
It's
30, 60, 90s?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly, and full disclosure, right, as more of a regional guy and slash owner, I've kind of got away from these. So it's
Yeah.
interesting is now I find myself in a position where we're doing, more hiring and onboarding, and I have somebody coming in, I'm going to have to jump back in there. So the answer is
Yeah.
actually I've now grown to a point where I don't do a ton of this.
Oh, okay.
I'm more on board our CDs, but at the same time, I'm going to be one of our clinics. We have somebody stepping away from a paternity leave perspective. I'm going to have to step up into this position a little bit more frequently, just this one location. And so it's a good refresher. I think it's good for you to jump in and do this. 'Cause I know this is
Yeah.
your wheelhouse.
Well, this is where the regional's a nice role because, excuse me, for you, you're not big enough that you have regional directors, right? There's you and then there's the clinic director. So this is where the regional was kind of like you had to basically be very good at coaching a bunch of people on how to do this, and
Yes.
you lean on your own experience. But this is good. I mean, a clinic director in a corporate clinic is a clinic owner for 80% of the PT clinics out there. Usually,
Yes.
most people don't have more than two or three locations, right? So the thing that I would always say is, you got my thoughts on the 30, 60, 90, right? And then at 90 is really where you're making your decision as a owner, right? Or as a director of like, is this person really going to work out, right? You got to give them that time to kind of get used to it, get used to the flow, different clinic, especially if they came from hospital or home health or something and you're an outpatient. Um, but then what I would typically do is we had our staff meetings, but then I would also try and do 5-minute meetings. And that was just a quick hitter of everyone knew once a month the director is going to sit and you and them are going to be in a room and you get to tell them whatever the heck you're pissed off about, right? And this wasn't necessarily onboarding, it was more of like a staff correction or staff, not correction. Um, like getting their feedback and how we're doing and how they're feeling, right? So that I know if they're getting pissed off and I can work on stuff when they're not in the room. But this is also great for onboarding because, once you're at the 90 days, then I mean, yearly review. And if they start right after you've done performance reviews, like, are you really going to make them do a self review and like all that crap that you have to do for HR with the big companies and all that? Probably not, right? And you don't want to put all that. You want your director to have to do performance reviews and focus on that and then not have to do it for the next however many years or however many months. So the 5-minute meeting was always a nice kind of mini review. And in that, it was just a vibe check. It was just literally being like, okay, how you feeling about this? Whatever. And if there was ever something where it was like productivity, it was a great closed door way of having that conversation because almost nobody wants to talk about productivity and then they definitely don't want to talk about it at a staff meeting. So it was nice that if globally you as a clinic sucked at doing something, then yeah, okay, we have that as a staff meeting. But it was a way that you could kind of build up a new grad who maybe more, or a new grad or a new hire, right? Who maybe wasn't, they wouldn't want to ask a question in a staff meeting. And that was kind of how you structure it. But I would tell my directors, figure it out yourself. If you got somebody who's high touch, do it every week. Get coffee with them every week. This is a person that's going to bring $200,000 a year into your business.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's important. Get them a coffee. I'll buy the coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did that. I literally gave Starbucks gift cards. I put a stack of them in the front desk, and I said, "This is for the director to give to you, so that you guys can sit and talk for 10 minutes." Right?
Yeah.
I had others where they're like, "Dude, I would be annoying the living hell out of my people if I did that." And I'd be like, "Great, I'll buy you the pizza." Right? We'll have one big staff meeting. We can talk about it. Right? But I would always be big about modifying after that 30, 60, 90. But the 30, 60, 90 was very structured. First one, vibe check. Make sure they're feeling good. No big questions. You're doing awesome. Pat on the back. Let's go. 60 days. Remember those productivity metrics we talked about? They're kind of important, right? 90. Okay. This is where you're failing. This is where you need to get better, or this is where you're doing awesome.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think the other part of it is you talked about like it when you get my experience has been when you get to that that 90-day meeting. right? One of the things I think that happens is when you push an employee to be better and work on mentorship and they don't want to, generally they kind of fire themselves. They end up quitting,
Hmm.
right? Versus so like to push them early and set the tone early and be like, this is part of the culture and this is why we do it, usually works out really, really well.
Yeah.
That's my experience because then the person goes, oh, I get it. I get what we're doing here. And then they start to work, their
Yeah.
butts off. So versus that carryover.
And this is why, like, being at least a respected physical therapist as the clinic director is a big thing. And I mean, if you're listening to this and you're higher up and you're trying to figure who's a clinic director or not, most people who've ever been a clinic director know it's kind of you're still a clinician with some other added tasks, but it's not you're not making real estate decisions, strategic planning, things like that. So these can turn into mentorship. I mean, sometimes I've had it where people are like, yeah, my 5 minute meeting is basically 20 minutes of mentorship every 3 weeks. Awesome. If that's what the person needs, that's what they need. Like, let's go. Um, and if not, then the director should really be setting them up with whoever is kind of the lead clinician.
Yeah. No, and I think that's the key piece is that basically what Owen's talking about is the structure is key, right? Like for us, basically what we do is we have a 2 week block where they have very specific meetings on a regular basis. And then there is a regular check-in that the CD has with each person. We used to do it weekly. Now we do it a little bit more like once a month, bi-weekly, that kind of thing. I think I like the 30, 60, 90 days. I like the once a month because I do think now we do weekly WIG meetings, which is every week where we check in with the entire staff. I think that's important. Today I kind of said to them, I said to my staff and checked in, I go, do you guys all know why like we're so busy here in the clinics? And I think one of the things I love about this is the twist, right? Is to make sure you're highlighting positive things on a more regular basis because I think really bad workplaces. I heard Simon Sinek, for those who have read anything about him and his books, like he's really good at this. He basically talked about one of the things you can do with your employees on a regular basis is just tell them when they're doing a really good job, right? So
Oh
many,
my God,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
The
right. So
cheapest
like,
retention tool possible is
it,
showing some damn appreciation.
it really is, right?
Like, Jesus.
In fact, we have a clinical leadership track amongst our entire company, and one of the big things we talk about is like basically the five languages of appreciation. And I think one of the things I said to my staff literally today, I go, do you guys all know why we're so busy in these clinics? And they were like, oh, we have a waiting list. Oh, because we're doing this. Everything was negative. Everything was a negative thing. I go, guys, it's because you're all doing an amazing job. I go, everybody wants to come see you, right? That is literally why we're that busy. I was like, so please,
Yeah.
like, let me tell you all right now, like, how much I appreciate the work you're doing. The reason we're really busy is because you guys are all a bunch of rock stars, and like, you're doing
Yeah.
a great job, and I believe in all
And
of you.
scared managers will be afraid to say that because all they're thinking is that means they're going to ask for more money. Right.
Yeah,
And it's like, no, man, like just tell them they're doing great. Like
yeah.
they are,
By the
you
way,
know,
if they ask for our money, all right, cool. Like again, right
let's
now,
figure it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
if their productivity is over 95%, okay, let's figure that
Yeah.
out, right?
Let's go.
Like it's not so.
I win, you win, we all win. Let's go.
100%. And so I think the aspect of that is I think a lot that goes so far personally. Like if I really
Mhm.
think about that, like a lot of his that weekly meeting is important in my opinion. And then having more check-ins. Like I don't probably do as much the 30, 60, 90. We do have the 2 weeks that we really onboard people. We do have them set up some time for documentation. We do try and have regular meetings and mentorship stuff. We do have these WIG meetings that are weekly. And if we feel like somebody needs a little bit more mentorship, like particularly a new grad that
Yeah.
struggles, like we make sure they have weekly meetings. Um, so
But
that's the kind of stuff that we
that's
do.
the point of the 30,
Yeah.
60, 90 is that for 90% of the people, it's just you guys checking in and talking,
Yeah.
having a lunch.
Exactly.
It's a good time, right? It's mostly for that 10% where, okay, we have to have a crucial conversation. And
Yeah.
then we can say, look, we have a review at 90 days and we did your performance and it sucked and I'm sorry, we're done. Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to having to wait another 6 months till the performance review comes up and tell them all this stuff. Right.
I think
Or force a director to have that conversation out of the blue, which is awkward as shit. So if you do 30, 60, 90, you can say, okay, dude, 90 days, this guy's terrible. I don't want him in my clinic for one more minute. And then it's like, fantastic. Here's all the reasons why you're gone.
yeah.
Right. And then they
Yeah.
can't sue you for wrongful
Yeah.
termination.
And by the way, this is also why you should always be hiring, right? Number one, right?
Yep.
Number one,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
if that happens, if you have a bad, if you swing and you miss on a bad employee. But number
Mhm.
two, I think was really, really good. One of the things I think I would put in here. So if you're person who is listening to this in a management position and is thinking, "Oh my God, like I do not meet that much with those people." I think what I'm also taking away from Owen that I would definitely recommend is having structured times,
Mhm. Yeah.
meaning they're planned, right? Because I agree with Owen. There's a certain amount of time that I've had people and I go, how's the documentation system going? They're like, good, but I'm really running behind. I go, is everything all good? Yep, everything's all good. And I say, would it make more sense for me to give you the other 38 minutes of this meeting, this 40-minute meeting to go do
Mhm.
your notes? And they're like, yes, that'd be awesome. I'm like, perfect, cool. Everything's good?
Fantastic.
Everything's good?
Yeah.
Good. See ya. Like, it's just having that set thing on the calendar to be double checking and making sure everybody's good and everybody's happy.
And that's where you trust your manager, right?
Yeah.
If you're saying, oh God, we have to have this 90-day meeting, that's a good thing, right?
Yes.
Because that means, dude, I don't see any reason. This is a great employee. Like, there's nothing wrong here. Then it just becomes cool. Like, great. Buy them lunch. I don't know. Do something nice, right? Or like you said, hey, we have 45 minutes on the clock. Do you just want to finish your notes? You're kicking ass. Any questions? No? Great, you know. But again, it's for that 10% so that you can say, look, policy is, and this is why we talk about, standard operating procedures, documents before you even have an employee, all that stuff. Because if your first hire sucks, it's really nice to be able to say like, oh, by the way, we have 30, 60, 90 here. And, as opposed to you just creating it out of thin air.
Yeah.
So those are some big things. And I mean, we could kind of talk a little bit about like, because I mean, this is the onboarding, right? This is the first, what, like 6 months, I'd say. Because I mean, in 6 months, you've kind of made your decision and they've kind of made their decision. I've always thought that if someone's going to leave you, they're going to do it by 6 months. Like if it's terrible onboarding, the director is out on maternity leave and then the backup director forgot five different things and started slacking and you couldn't do anything about it. By 6 months, they're pretty much out the door, right? So I always really try and look to do those check-ins pretty heavy at the first, like say month three, four, and five, right? After the 30, 60, 90, and then you can stretch it out, and that's where you use your discretion as an owner to be like, look, am I just beating a dead horse or not?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think the other aspect of what I would kind of fit into here is, how we kind of develop PTs, what we do from a
Yeah.
teaching, leadership, mentorship, and continuing education. I think one thing that we definitely do is we definitely talk with all of our physical therapists, and what we do is we basically say, hey, from this perspective, what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, hey, what are the paths you want to do? Is it more in leadership? Is it more in
Mhm.
sports? Is it more in academia? Is it more just being a great physical therapist? Like, what are you looking to do? What kind of path are you looking to do here? And I think that's a huge piece of it because it allows people then to develop those different, like you're not just forcing somebody down one particular path because I have found that the real reason for why most people leave is usually not money. It's usually because they feel stuck or because they
Yep.
hate you, right? They hate the manager. So again, that's why like that. If you look at all the
No one hates
research,
us, Brian.
yeah, yeah. Well, I wish I could tell you that's
Yeah, I
right.
know, right? Believe me.
But I think that in all honesty, I think that it's really important for people to understand is like that's the number one reason for why most people leave is because they don't get along with their manager, right?
Mhm.
Or because they feel stuck. And so in that scenario, like that's when everybody's come to me from a standpoint of like they want a job with us. So they're looking for a fresh start. And so that I think is a really good thing to have in some of these onboarding, for a new
Yeah.
physical therapist is like, here's how we bring you on, here's how we do these things, like here's the different strategies, like here's how we're going to help you. So that's really important. And I think that mentorship is essential, right? And how
And
that
I,
works.
And that's important, and that's a teaser for what we're going to do in part five. So,
Yes.
if you want to know more about that, stick around for our next podcast next week. We'll be talking all about clinical mentorship, leadership mentorship programs, how to retain good employees, how to build your practice through good people management, right? So that you don't have to constantly be hiring. If you want this done for you, right, or with you, physio-growth.com. We have weekly Q&A calls and we offer one-on-one coaching to be able to allow you to kind of develop and use our systems that we've used and proven in the real world, and we give them to you. So, physio-growth.com. Yeah, hit us up. We're
Make sure to
we're
check us
we're
out.
we're having great conversations, man. I'm loving it.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And if you want more individual help on something like this and how do I onboard my people, what do they ask me here, stay tuned. This is what we do.
Yep. All right, my
Cool.
friend.
See
We
ya.
are out. See ya.